Hello, mixtresses and mixters. This is mixtressrae. You're watching mixtress video. So I just kind of like had a spontaneous idea. Lately, I've been thinking about how, when I first started this process of collecting tarot decks, I thought that I needed to, find my perfect, the perfect tarot deck that represents me aesthetically. I'm just going to decorate the scene while I'm babbling here. And I thought I needed to, have the perfect thing, the perfect aesthetic, all of that stuff. And lately I'm realizing that the aesthetic doesn't necessarily, I have to connect to the imagery, so I do have to think it's pretty. But that is not actually the most important bit, because a lot of the tarot decks and oracle decks too that I have are not necessarily my aesthetic, but they connect to me because of the circumstances I got them, or just the place that I was in my life, or who gave it to me, or whatever. I'm realizing that sometimes I work better with tarot decks that I don't think are just breathtakingly beautiful, which is something that I have mentioned before. So I'm starting a hashtag, as I'm sure you can see in the title, not my tarot aesthetic. So I'm wondering if anyone else has, and I'm just going to show my collection of tarot and oracle decks that, or I might not do oracle. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how long the video is, and I'll end with oracle if there's anything that fits in that category in my oracle collection, which I think at least one thing does. So yeah, I'm going to show off the things that aren't necessarily something that if I had seen them. And the point of this is that sometimes the decks that are best for you are the ones that just show up in your life. Not necessarily that they've been gifted to you, but like you see them at a thrift store or at a rummage sale or whatever, and it's just the perfect moment, or there's some kind of story attached to it. So the idea of this is that if you have decks like that in your own collection, you can tell the story of how they came into your life. So this might be a fun little project for people that are interested in doing it. Okay, so I have all of my decks like right over here. So I'm going to just kind of like look at them and decide like what came into my life and isn't necessarily my tarot aesthetic. Well, I mean, this is the one I showed on my channel yesterday, so it's still going to be mostly in order. But I mean, let's be honest, the RWS is not really my tarot aesthetic. It's not. I don't like the art style very much, which is weird to say because it's like I've accepted it. I've integrated it into my tarot life. The way that it sort of came into my life finally is an app that I've showed you guys before. It's an app for Android called Galaxy Tarot. It's the best Android tarot app in my opinion, so if you don't have it, check it out. Where they have like sort of print making, like block style. They've rendered this deck in sort of a printmaking block style art somehow and made it borderless, and it's just a really informative, great app. So that's kind of how this deck finally came into my life, is I downloaded that app. And then this particular deck that I hold in my hands was gifted to me by a patron, which is really cool. And in this case, I'm talking about a Patreon patron, although I work at a library and we call them patrons too. So I've never been gifted a tarot deck by a library patron, but that would be great too. Let's see, what else? What else is not my aesthetic? I mean, I guess I don't really have like good stories for all of these, but I mean, this isn't really my aesthetic either. It's purple, but other than that, the Trionfi della Luna is not really my aesthetic, but I kind of fell in love with this deck watching Anna from Astral Lady Tarot, her channel. I kind of fell in love with this deck. Is this upside down? I guess it was. Okay, I don't know. I don't do reversals, so like I don't want things to be upside down. But anyway, this is not necessarily my aesthetic. I never have been drawn to a Marseille deck in my life, but this one I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. We'll see how it goes. And I immediately connected with it. Another thing that I've noticed now that I'm like not really acquiring decks with any kind of regularity, and I don't want to, because it's very infrequently that I acquire a new deck, it means that I get to spend more time with new tarot decks. So I'm actually like, because I'm spending more time with them, I'm bonding with them more. And it's like every deck that I've brought into my collection in the last few months has, I think it's only been 3. And every single one of them, I've had time to really sit with them and think about them as my newest deck. And it's exciting. And it's not like I'm getting new decks all the time, so they get forgotten before I have a chance to bond with them. Plus, I'm just getting better at knowing what I'll like. But this one wasn't from that era. You know, I bought this because I wanted to be cool like Anna. And I was not sure at all if I was going to like it. But I did. I got lucky. This is my first card pull from the deck, too. Okay, another. These are in no particular order because it's just what my eye falls upon here. Not my tarot aesthetic. The Field Tarot. This was gifted to me from Julie at Peekaboo Rose's channel because I had it on my Amazon wish list. Because when I first decided to make my wish list public, I put a whole bunch of things on there because I was like, I want people to have choices if they want to buy me something. And I didn't really have any idea. Like, I was slightly intrigued by this tarot deck, but I didn't really have any idea if I would like it. And overall, it's just, I mean, look at this image. It's so basic bitch, right? I mean, no offense. I added the cat myself on that one. I mean, I do think it's beautiful artwork, but it's got the key words. It's just not really my color palette. Like some like this with like the little cheesy crystals on the end. Like, I don't know. There's something that I don't like about this art, but at the same time, it was the circumstance. It was gifted to me. It showed up on my porch when I wasn't expecting it. And it was at a time when I wasn't really acquiring decks anymore. So I, spent a lot of time with this tarot deck. And the interesting thing is I had 0 expectations for this because it was something that I just on a whim put on my wish list, and then I ended up receiving it like less than a couple weeks later. It was not something that I built up a lot of anticipation for and expectations for. It was just, I'm flipping through ones that I've already flipped through now. I had 0 expectations for this. It came into my life and I found a way to work with it and I really like it. But this is not, another thing about this is I'm realizing that like the tarot decks that I have don't have to define me. For a while, I think I was thinking of the tarot decks that I have as being something that if someone saw my collection, that they would know who I am based on that collection. You're not necessarily going to know that by looking at the decks that I'm showing you here today. You're not really going to necessarily know anything about me by seeing these decks because they came into my life for sentimental reasons. You know what I mean? I hope that some of this makes sense to you guys. I'm trying to think what else. Okay, yeah, I got one. The first tarot deck in this current era for me was Tarot of the Cat People, which I've told this story many times before, but this was gifted to me by a family friend. He's a hoarder, and he's had it. He's like an organized hoarder, though. He's had it in his life. It was still in the wrapping. And he's had it for decades before he gave it to me. He gave it to me in 2018. And I believe this is one of the very first printings, so it would have been from like the mid 80s. And like, I do really appreciate this tarot deck. It's got cats in it. I like the color schemes. This is one of my favorite cards, actually. But it's not something that, like, when I was very, very first looking at it, my first reaction was, I don't really like this. But then I kept looking at it, and this is the first RWS style deck, meaning that it has illustrated pips that I had ever held in my hands, as I've said many times. And it sang to me for some reason. There you go. Hashtag not my tarot aesthetic. Although these backs totally are my aesthetic. Look at that. I love it. Except for the borders. And also, you know, just things that come to me in a special way, because this was in its box for decades, almost since, you know, it's possible this deck has been in his house since I was like 3 years old, you know? And then he gave it to me when I was in my 30s, and there you go. And it came to me at the right time for me, I guess, because I had just downloaded that Galaxy app too, and so I was getting to know the RWS for the first time ever, and then this came into my life, and I started making the connections between why I'd never connected to tarot before, and it was just all a thing, you know? Not necessarily my tarot aesthetic. I think that's it, maybe. Yeah, everything else that I'm looking at on my shelves, it's like I bought it because I liked the art, and then I happened to connect with it as well. The only other thing I can think of is this is a very recent acquisition. This is Morgan's Tarot, which is actually an oracle deck, and it was created in 1970. And I mean, I love 70s things, but this is one that, again, I saw it on Anna Astro Lady Tarot. I saw it on her channel, and I put it on my wish list. And Meg, Rose Honey Ritual, she sent it to me from my wish list because she also has it and really loves it. And it's so nonsensical, but it's really encouraging. It's almost like an affirmation deck for me because it reminds me not to take life too seriously, which is kind of the whole reason why I have this tattoo, because it's just a reminder not to take life too seriously. And slimy glob reigns. It's, you know, but it's just like, you know, it's definitely not something that like I would see and think, oh, I have to have that deck, but I'm connecting to it a lot. Hack that you probably thought of yourself already, but if you do have this deck and you've had trouble connecting to it because the guidebook, let me just show you real quick because I have it out, doesn't have like, it's not in any particular order. So I just numbered them in the guidebook, and then I put the corresponding number on the cards. So that way it's much easier. So you don't have to be like, okay, you are a pawn, you. Okay, no, don't have to do it that way. And some of the like explanations on the cards are so silly. Yeah, I love it. I love it. And sometimes, like, even reading, sometimes in the guidebook, like, the entries will seem like they're supposed to make sense or be really profound, but I don't understand them at all. So it ends up being like, I just make up my own meanings for this stuff, and I feel like that's totally valid too. This has become just like one of my very favorite oracle decks in the short time that I've had it. I think I've only had it like 2 weeks or so. And I love it. Always remember this. But let's just, as an example, I'll show you in the guidebook, like kind of how this works. Always remember this. 87. Yeah, and it's like there are 88 cards in this deck. The attempt to remember every insight can place a self-defeating strain on the mental system. Hence, for some, it may be more useful to keep things simple and let the unself-conscious self be in charge. However, due to the transitoriness of existence and the impermanence of our knowledge, and for the sake of consistency, a memory system can be quite useful. So like the first part seems totally clear, and then it just like gets muddy in the end. But it's fine because like this deck was created for sure from just like a really, I don't know, a really pure, beautiful space, I think. Oh my god, this is my favorite card of the whole deck. I've got a hair stuck in it. There's always hair everywhere in my house because I have super long hair and then I have two hugely hairy dogs. Okay, I love the guidebook entry for this one. Do wacky do. I'm going to read it to you. Originally, this was a tall, thin bird that rapidly peeked, not pecked, through many windows. Later, it was a tall, thin bird staring around itself at the dull, stupid life of the modern age. Finally, it assumed its present form. I don't know why, but I love it so much. It's like the mission statement of this entire deck. The life cycle of this bird. It had different outlooks on life at different times. And now it's realizing in its older, wiser state that nothing fucking matters. Yeah. Anyway, let me look around a little bit more. Is there anything else that I've acquired that isn't necessarily my aesthetic, but somehow it made sense to me? I can't think of anything else. So this wasn't actually like, I didn't have that many to show off, I guess. I don't have enough really good stories of how I got decks. I mean, really my best story is just that that family friend had that deck in his house for decades and then gave it to me in my 30s. That's it. That's my biggest story. And of course, anytime I receive something as a gift, it means more to me. But sometimes, you know, like even if it has come to me as a gift, it's not, if it doesn't resonate with me, it doesn't resonate with me. But what I mean is like your connection to these tools can come from anywhere. And it's not, I'm realizing that it doesn't necessarily matter what I have. Like I was watching one of those like pick a pile readings that, you know, people do en masse. I watch those all the time, even if I'm not at all interested in the divination aspects. Like if the person has like a soothing voice and a decent aesthetic and I just like listening to them, I will put them on in the background. And there's one that I watch her stuff all the time and I'm almost never interested in the content and it never applies to me, so it doesn't matter. I'm not like picking a pile for myself necessarily. I'm just putting it on. And I realized that, and she's always using different decks all the time, different decks. She has to have like hundreds of tarot and oracle decks. And I usually don't like any of them, but they're not prohibitive, like her having all these different decks, and she probably doesn't have a huge connection to any of them necessarily. Or she might, but she doesn't talk about that. But it doesn't really matter what she has. You are the vessel. You are if you are a card reader, you are the important part, not the decks that you have. If you have, you know, the knowledge of tarot and oracle, the, you know, psychological curiosity, the psychic nature, if you have that in you, it doesn't matter which deck is in your hands. You're going to find a way to translate those messages, whether you believe that they come from ghosts, guides, and goddesses, or just your own inner knowing, more subconscious self brain. Science hasn't figured out how to describe it yet. However you describe that energy of your own inner knowing, you have that in you, no matter what deck you use. So I want to be a little bit better about like talking about that kind of thing with you guys, and hopefully like being a little bit more, I don't want to say the word inspiring, but I want you to come away from watching the videos on my channel feeling like you have everything you need. Just in general, I want you to feel that instead of, oh, I need to get that thing, or I need to get that thing. I mean, of course, sorry, my belly's making weird noises. I hope you couldn't hear that. I hope that I just don't want to ever make someone want something, although I can't control that. And sometimes I'm going to be showing off things that I'm super excited about, and it's going to make you want them. And sometimes it's going to make you want something, you're going to purchase it, and it's actually going to really work for you, and that's great. But overall, I hope that that the content that I provide from now on can really be more about, I don't know, more about how I view the world spiritually, how I want to do more pick-a-pile readings. Like, I've been thinking about it because I know that a lot of people in the tarot community, okay, this is just becoming a ramble, but that's how all my videos are, so whatever. I know there's definitely a lot of people in the tarot community that think pick-a-pile readings are garbage, but I don't. I think if you are, I mean, most of the time I'm not taking them seriously necessarily, but I enjoy them. I enjoy doing them. I enjoy watching them myself, and I don't think they're garbage because, you know, basically we're all adults here, and if you are watching a pick-a-pile reading, you're an adult. You know that I think we can come from the basic assumption that if I'm creating a pick-a-pile reading or people are watching a pick-a-pile reading, they're going to be taking that shit with a grain of salt, right? And if they're not, if they're taking everything 100% seriously and treating it as if it's a personal reading for them, that's on them. I mean, it's not necessarily wrong to do that. Like, what if what you're saying in a pick-a-pile reading is getting to someone and it's a very specific message for that person, and everyone else that watches and picks that pile gets a little something out of it, but there's one specific person that it is for them, and they wouldn't have been able to afford to pay for their own reading. They showed up to that channel because they can't afford to buy their own reading. They showed up there, and it just happened to be that they got the exact very specific message that you are creating in a pick-a-pile reading. That could happen. And yeah, I'm sure that there are a lot of YouTubers out there doing pick-a-pile tarot readings that are kind of, you know, shisty people or whatever. But there are shisty people everywhere. You know, hashtag not all pick-a-pile readings. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, some of the ones I watch are probably kind of questionable, but whatever, you know, we're all adults here. Like, I don't think that it's wrong to put that content out there, because every time I do a pick-a-pile reading, I'm practicing reading. I'm getting better at my craft, and it's really fun to do. And if it provides someone some, you know, reassurance or encouragement in their lives, you know, like I was listening to a tarot podcast recently. It's called Tarot is Fucking Cool. It's awesome. I love it. I just discovered it because my washer was broken last week and I had to go to the laundromat for the first time in like 15 years. And I was like, okay, I just want to listen to a tarot podcast. And I used to listen to Tarot for the Wild Soul, but I don't know if this is controversial or not, but I really like the way that she interprets certain tarot cards, but she has just become so, I don't know, full of herself. And anyway, whatever. You guys don't need to know the reasons why I don't like Tarot for the Wild Soul anymore, but I did for a while. So I stopped listening to it a long time ago, but I hadn't picked another tarot podcast to listen to. So I was like, okay, this is the time. I'm going to fucking find one because I want a tarot podcast. I want one that's not full of ads and not somebody trying to sell their $600 course and all that shit. I just want someone talking about tarot. I want like personalities that I like listening to. And that was the first one I tried because I was like, okay, this one's called Tarot is fucking cool. So obviously they're not too worried about like, you know, being corporate shills because they're putting fucking in the title of their podcast. So, and it's great. I love it. What was the point in me saying that? Somewhere there is an energy leak. That's the message. Find out where that energy leak is and patch it up, bitches. What was my point in saying that? Oh, they were saying, okay, one of the hosts, Ruby, they were saying that they like to, that, you know, if someone is questioning them and questioning tarot in general and questioning its validity and they are doing a reading for that person, or they are doing someone's questioning the validity of tarot, how do you respond to that as a tarot reader? And this podcast is really focused on that kind of thing too. Just talking to tarot readers, professional readers in general, is not necessarily just for that, but they've both been readers for a while, and it's been providing a lot of resources for me to become a better reader for others. And Ruby said something to the effect of, you know, if someone comes away from a reading with me feeling a little bit more clear about what they need to do with their life, about how to deal with the current situation that they're dealing with, if they come away from my readings feeling a little bit more prepared and having a little bit more clarity, it doesn't matter if I'm psychic or not. It doesn't matter if the whole thing is, whether or not it's real, whether or not it doesn't matter if they believe in, you know, the power of tarot or any of that stuff. It doesn't matter, because if they come away feeling better, then how is this wrong? How could it be wrong? Same thing with pick-a-pile readings. If somebody comes away from a pick-a-pile reading feeling a little bit better, feeling a little bit heard, I mean, a lot of those like third party, like love triangle, like sort of like those super popular pick-a-pile readings that seem like kind of ridiculous. Like, why are you asking those cards of the tarot on a pick-a-pile reading? But, you know, for a lot of those people that are in those complicated love situations, having someone like tell you some sweet things in a pick-a-pile reading might just make you feel a little bit less alone, make you feel a little bit validated for the complicated feelings that you're going through in that situation. And is it a morally questionable situation that those people might be in? Yes. They might be too nervous to like ask an actual reader to talk about that thing right now in their lives. They may be feeling guilty a lot of the time about their situation, but hopefully they're not taking those things insanely seriously. But anyway, oh my God. I'm going to stop before this is a 30-minute long video of me just rambling about random shit. But the point, and y'all know I don't have one. Is that the first time I've said that on this YouTube channel? I say that on my radio show all the time because I'm always rambling on my radio show. So I always say the point, and y'all know I don't have one, is that I'm using what I have, and it is really awesome, actually. At this point in my life, I've been, you know, kind of not acquiring too many things for the last couple months pretty consistently. It's not like I'm not acquiring anything. It's not like I'm not buying anything, but I am just mostly not buying anything, mostly not acquiring anything. For the most part, I have been going through my life Marie Kondo style, collection by collection of different things, and just combing out and combing out and combing out. And Mary Grace is totally right. Going back to the river repeatedly is something that she says on her channel about this culling process. You have to go back to the river repeatedly. I'm constantly like, okay, I'm mentally ready to go back in. Is there anything else that I need to let go of? You know, it's a constant process, but what's the point? The point is no point. I wanted to sum this up in some kind of way. The only thing I can sum up is you are okay exactly with what you currently have. The perfect tarot deck is not out there. It's not. Unless you create it, maybe. And even in that case, like if I were creating my own tarot deck, I would most likely end up with something like that I wish I'd done better on this thing, or I wish I'd done better on this thing. And like, 5 years from now, I might be better equipped to bring that thing to life. Nothing is perfect. So searching for the perfect anything, it's just never gonna happen. It's just not. It's the paradox of choice. If you've never read that book, like the basic concept in the paradox of choice is like we have too many choices in our society for things to buy at this point. And if you have 3 to 5 choices of cereals or whatever, you're going to be like, okay, that's the best one of those. Grab it, you go, you stop thinking about it. But if you have 70 different cereals to choose from, which we all do, like any given time, right? Unless we're in some kind of small town that has like a Dozie's market situation, you know what I mean? Then we're going to just be completely paralyzed by the amount of choices, and we're going to feel like no matter what we pick, it's not the perfect choice. And so we're constantly dissatisfied with the choices that we make in our lives. I forgot who the author of that book is, but again, it's called Paradox of Choice. And that's the basic concept of the book, is just talking about, it's like the 7 of Cups. Like, you have too many goddamn choices. I guess in the 7 of Cups, that's not too many. I can deal with 7 choices. But if we're constantly consuming all of this tarot content and looking at all of these different decks, and there's just so many that are so great, there's just so many that are so beautiful, so many that have so many different interpretations, and you can learn tarot by seeing all the different ways that different artists portray the concepts within tarot. There's so many different ways to see it, but you don't have to own these decks to see it that way, to have those realizations. You don't have to own them, because you can watch walkthroughs of tarot decks. You could sit and pause on the imagery and reflect in your journal on what you see in that card without purchasing the deck. Another thing that I thought of before or after I made the video yesterday, whenever I was like talking about like, do you need the RWS deck in my Real Deep series or whatever? And to be honest, I don't think you do. Like, is this deck really, really useful as far as tarot? Hell yeah, it is, because it's the one that most tarot decks derive from. But if you really, really do not want to hold this deck in your hands, but you feel like you need to have it because everybody says this is the deck to have, guess what? You can still have all of the knowledge that this deck has to give you by looking at the imagery on YouTube, in tarot books that you might buy, because the imagery is going to be available in that. You can learn everything that this tarot deck has to offer you without holding it in your hands. Anyway, I'm going to shut up now because this has just become so long. But I hope that something came through on this. And if you want to be a part of the Not My Tarot aesthetic, I thought I was just going to quickly show off some tarot decks that I have acquired that I didn't necessarily think was my aesthetic, but it works for me anyway. That was going to be like a 10-minute video, but of course it wasn't. Thank you for watching. Bye.